and welcome to episode 68 of Battlefield 4 News. And Battlefield 4 News should now just contain Battlefield 4 News. Battlefield Hardline News now has its own show with its own titles. And it should be easy to spot in the timeline because this will be the thumbnail for Battlefield Hardline News and this will be the thumbnail for Battlefield Hardline Gameplay. And they both now have their own separate playlists as well. So that should separate Hardline from Battlefield 4 and make it a bit easier to keep track of what's what. So the Battlefield 4 news today comes from the community test environment where there's been another patch to Initiative 2, which is the gameplay initiative, and they've released some details on what they're working on and what their future plans are. So let's have a look at it. So this is core gameplay patch 2, and although it seems like a very small patch, there's a lot of stuff actually in here. As the ballistic shield was released into the Wild West last Friday, we have been watching your feedback on our initial setup and how you have been using it. Today's update will tune the shield to match up with the design intent and fix some bugs related to tank and projectile damage to the shield. This is a small but quick update as we need to get changes into the build slated for Dragon's Teeth release. We hope you enjoy the changes we have made and can't wait to get your continued feedback on these tweaks. So the shield has been nerfed, that's basically the breakdown of that. Go into a few more details in a bit. But there's also a couple of lines there that have a major impact on the CTE gameplay. In this update, we also enable all the Dragon's Teeth weapons and continue to run the servers with all unlocks enabled, so please focus on testing these as well. The Dragon's Teeth guns are up and being tested on CTE as we speak, and here you can see some footage of the Bulldog, and this is from a video I'll be releasing soon when I've got enough footage of all the Dragon's Teeth guns and how they handle. So Dragon's Teeth is getting its work out on the CTE servers before it comes to the live game. Now this is interesting because I think it means we're not going to get the early release of the guns on a live game. So if you remember with the rest of the DLCs, there's been that sneaky patch a week before the DLC launch that gave you all the guns and the assignments. Now I think that isn't going to happen, because I think that was some sneaky testing of the guns going on. Now I think what will happen is it will all be tested on CTE and then the DLC will launch in one patch, because it should, in theory, have all been tested. So let's have a look and see what they've done to the shield. Shield bash damage, distance and spread have been tuned. No more one-hit kills. So from playing with the shield, I can tell you that sometimes it's a 2, sometimes it's a 3. It now sometimes headshots and sometimes doesn't. So I think it's 2 if you get the headshot in there, 3 if you don't. But that's just from playing around with it. I've got no figures for that. Now the original distance was 2 meters, which was actually further than the shield's bash animation. Now it seems to be much closer to that bash animation, so it's probably down to maybe a meter, if that. And the spread is how accurate you had to be with the shield. Because the shield's quite wide, it used to be pretty much that if you caught somebody with it, then they died. Now you have to get it a lot closer to the middle to actually get the damage. So the shield bash has been considerably nerfed from the overpowered monster it was before. Shield incoming projectile damage improved. Well, that's slightly strange wording. What it means is the shield's incoming projectile damage has been unimproved, if you see what I mean. Basically, the shield is worse against incoming projectiles. No longer can you stand in front of an APC with your shield and take 10 rounds from it before you die. You now pretty much die as if you hadn't got a shield there. And it's the same with tank rounds, and I think the cannon rounds off helicopters, that kind of thing, now pretty much ignores the shield. And the last part there is all Dragon's Teeth weapons available for testing. So they're all out there, and I'll do a video on them It might be out tomorrow, it might be Monday, I'm not sure. But I want to try and get some decent footage and some experience with them before I just throw up footage of the guns firing. So the next piece of news is also from the community test environment, and this is a post by Tiggy, I think that's how you pronounce it or say it, T1GGE, who's one of the DICE devs. So Tiggy put this post up, which is about the future direction of the current initiative. So these are the items that are either ready or are works in progress. And the first of the ready items is third person head flinching improvements. So if somebody's behind a wall and all you can see is their head and you shoot at it and you hit, your second shot is probably going to miss because of a head flinching animation that makes them duck their head when they're shot at. It doesn't say if this is being tweaked or removed, but hopefully it will be sorted so you might actually hit them with a second shot. Base map rush improvements, first pass. All maps but Dawnbreaker ready, new cover and slightly tweaked rule set. So it looks like Rush is getting some love in for a change. And they're changing every map. Now that's interesting. They're adding new cover and they're tweaking the rules. Now I'm not sure how they're doing this. I imagine the rule tweaks are to do with MCOMs being armed and the end of the round. That's the only kind of rule tweaks I can see happening. I always thought that arming an MCON should give you more tickets back, so you arm the MCON, you get 20 tickets back, and that way you've got a chance of actually defending that MCON once you've armed it. The works in progress: network visualization overlay, think frame overlay. Well, I thought frame overlay and it took me a good 5 minutes to work out what this was. It's basically on-screen information about your network status. So if you've ever seen any of my Mantle videos from a while ago, you'll see there's a lot of graphs and things that are showing you the frame rates. Think the same thing, but it's going to show you your network traffic and your ping times and your lost packets, that kind of thing. The high frequency bubble automation is essentially removing the need for you to change the 30 Hz settings. So what it will do is it will see how your PC is running, see how the network's running, and see how the server's running, and then adjust the tick rate to the maximum it can run for smooth gameplay. Squad join improvements. So I guess this is changing the interface and trying to fit the entire of a squad onto one team rather than splitting them across. Squad joins never really work that well. Suppression tuning pass, so I guess they're going to be turning down suppression on some weapons, turning it up on others. I think the idea from looking at Hardline is going to be only large caliber weapons suppressed, so LMGs, sniper rifles and vehicle mounted machine guns. Everything else isn't going to do it anymore, I don't think. UI and HUD improvements, no idea what they're planning for that. Obliteration competitive improvements. The only reason I can see they are flogging this dead horse is for future games and for Hardline. I cannot see why they are still trying to get Obliteration competitive working. Not for Battlefield 4 anyway, I think that's dead and gone on the competitive scene. So the next item, visual recoil dampening tuning, is one of the biggest problems in the game, and it's one that nobody shouts about. If you don't know what visual recoil is, then put something like a Cobra sight on your gun, a laser sight, walk up to a wall and fire at it. And then watch what happens to your Cobra sight in comparison to your laser sight. Your laser sight will stay pointed where you're aiming. The Cobra sight will dance all over the place. So something is obviously wrong there. The laser sight is staying pointed at the wall firmly where you're aiming, but your Cobra sight is bouncing around. And which one's right? Well, weirdly, your laser sight is pointing in the right place and your Cobra sight isn't, because of the recoil animation. Believe it or not, The animation that you see on the gun firing has nothing to do with where the bullets are going or where the gun is aimed. So yeah, it's quite a problem. And the last item is a bunch of final stand improvements. So it would seem that CTE and Dragon's Teeth are pretty much done in terms of major changes, and that now what they're looking at is the weapons, and any major changes in future will probably come in final stand. So the next couple of items are down as experimental and CTE tests, and it says these probably won't be released, at least not in this form. We might test them on the CTE though. Netcode damage application tweaks and vehicle physics improvements. So these have been done and might come to CTE. How does that work? Well, I'll tell you how that works. Those two are from HARDLINE. So we know that the vehicle physics has been improved in HARDLINE considerably over Battlefield 4, and we know that the netcode damage application has been drastically changed in HARDLINE as well. So that to me looks like two improvements that have been made to the HARDLINE engine that may well come back into CTE on Battlefield 4 to be tested for future battlefields, but not for Battlefield 4. And then in the plan section they've got weapon balances and vehicle balances. So that's the news we have from CTE, and all of these things that are happening on CTE will eventually hit the live game. Some of them are going to be in Dragon's Teeth, some of them, as we can see, are going to be in Final Stand. On the live servers, I think we're going to see less patches because there's going to be groups of improvements brought over from CTE to the live servers. And of course, in a couple of weeks, I imagine we're going to have Dragon's Teeth. So that will have a bunch of these CTE updates in it as well. That's it for this episode of Battlefield 4 News. Thanks for watching.